and all the American nation, let us beseech the Lord.
Petis folios autis, osis folios holos, et non pisti condor naftes, du Kyrie deithomen.
Υπέρ ευκρασίας αέρων εφορίας των καρπών της γης και καιρών ειρηνικών του Κυρίου δεηθώμεν.
Υπερπλέοντων, οδηπορούντων, νοσούντων, καμνόντων, εκμαλώτων, και της σωτηρίας αυτών του Κυρίου δεηθώμεν.
All right, good evening, everyone. Is this working? No, it's not working. Oh, here we go. Now it's working, it seems like. So good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight to our town hall to discuss the Cal Office of Emergency Services Security Grant and that we received, and our plan for implementing the funds that we've received. So hopefully we'll have a few more folks here tonight, but looking forward to hearing the presentation. But if I could ask you all to please rise, we'll offer a prayer as we start. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord Jesus Christ, our God, you are our firm foundation and our protector as we continue the work that you've entrusted to us to care for this church in Oakland. We pray that you will guide the hearts and minds of our community in ensuring that we have a place that is safe to gather our community, so that they are able to grow in their likeness and their relationship with you. All these things we ask, for you are a good God who loves mankind, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, now and ever to the ages of ages. Amen. So you can be seated. Again, I just wanted to offer my thanks to everyone who's here this evening, but also just say a word or two about why we're gathered here this evening, what we're going to be hearing about, and the opportunity that we have ahead of us. So it's been an ongoing conversation for some time, not only about improving the security on our campus, on our cathedral grounds, but also pursuing this opportunity that we have through the California Office of Emergency Services. And we had a wonderful committee of people who really in a short amount of time were able to gather all the requisite information, complete all the grant documents, and submit them on time. This was an incredible lift, and you all did it, I think, in about a week or so, that you were able to complete this grant and then submit that, which was amazing. And then we, this fall, found out that we had received $150,000 of grant funding. This was the maximum amount that was awarded, and we were among many other organizations and churches and places of worship in California that also applied for a grant. They received various denominations as well. Some were awarded this highest amount as we were, and others were awarded less. As you'll hear more about this evening too, these monies specifically correspond to what is called a vulnerability study. So as a part of that grant process and the application process, we had to identify specific areas on our cathedral grounds that were in need of, to use the language of the grant, so to speak, or the this area of focus to be hardened. So what you're going to hear about is the first phase that we're looking at in response to that, which has to do with a perimeter fence. So we look forward to updating you about what's been happening with this process and the opportunities that we have ahead of us, and we'll also welcome your feedback and questions tonight. Just again, as kind of a clarification too, since I think it's been some time since we've done anything like this as a church. I certainly haven't done a town hall since I've been here. We're not voting on anything tonight. There's no decision making that's happening, but we're just sharing information and hearing feedback and trying to better educate the community about the opportunity that we had ahead of us. So thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to Anna. Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay? Cool. Okay, so I will start with our perimeter fence project. Going to the project goals. The goal of the project is to, one, enhance security, provide a safe and secure environment for the cathedral, its parishioners, and visitors by clearly defining the property's perimeter. We've had a number of break-ins, car theft issues, unsolicited visitors on the property that we noticed here, and they want to store school centers there, so the security is something that's kind of top priority. Preserve aesthetic harmony, design a fence that complements the cathedral's architecture and surrounding landscape with minimal obstruction. Ensure accessibility, maintain easy and welcoming access for community members and guests, integrating gates and pathways that prioritize safety and usability. And then we'll go into the visual plan and construction details. Here is an overview aerial shot. To start, just to clarify again, we're going to be talking about phase 1 tonight, which is the perimeter fence, pedestrian gates, and service gate. So represented in this image, the orange line specifies the perimeter fence. The blue openings here are the pedestrian gates, which I'll get into after, but they open outwards. There will be one located here, which ties back to the fire. Hello, is that better? Should I start from the top? Okay, so I'll just reiterate. We're talking about phase 1, the perimeter fence, pedestrian gates, and service gate. So the orange line indicates where the perimeter fence would run. So from down here in front of the chapel, up and around to the entry, and then the opening will remain here. That's part of phase 2. And then the gate continues up on the perimeter of the upper parking lot to where the Mormon Temple wall is. The blue marks are where the pedestrian gates are. They will open outward. There's one here, kind of across from where the pond is, one to the left and the right of the main entrance. And then there will be a service gate, which already exists, but these doors will swing open inwards. And that is 27 feet wide, whereas the other ones are 4 feet wide. And here we have the site plan by Mr. Metaxas. Did you want to share anything?
Okay, so if you look, you'll see the red line from the parking garage up to the main entrance. That's the lowest portion of the fence. And in there is, right around there where the cursor is now, there's a pedestrian gate that can be used for fireman access because there's wet standpipes in the street, and in a case of emergency, they'd want to run hoses through there. So that would be accessible for them. Further up, there's another gate that would be an emergency exit for people on site. And then right now we're open for the same width driveway that we have now. And then there's another pedestrian gate a little further up. Where'd the arrow go? There it is. Again, that's for on-site use if necessary. Then another straight section up to a existing gate right now that will be identical to the fencing, 6 feet high, double swing gates inward. And that's for access for large trucks if they need to get to the rear, fire department emergency, things like that. That would be locked normally, though. And then another short portion going to the masonry wall of the Mormon temple. This fence system will be 10 feet back from face of curb. That gets us off of city property onto our property. I see a question. Oh, okay. Down in that area there where it goes to the parking structure, if you remember there's a horizontal railing on top of the retaining wall. This will be just on the street side of that horizontal railing. And then it will have a fan that sticks out over the driveway above car height, and that'll keep people from walking up the retaining wall, around the fence, hang on to the metal railing and getting access to the parking garage. So it would be a barrier to that as well. And it's high enough that a car or a truck will not hit it entering the parking garage. This is the typical appearance of the fence. It is 6 feet tall. The posts will be 8 feet typically on center, embedded in concrete, 36-inch minimum depth. We don't know the exact diameter of the piers yet, but probably 10 to 12 inches diameter of concrete surrounding each steel post. It will be, the pickets will remain vertical even with the slope. So it's a substantial slope down Lincoln Avenue, but the fence won't be tilted like that with the slope. The pickets will be vertical as they go down. Question?
Have you guys looked into a 7-foot fence rather than 6 foot?
Pardon me?
Have you looked into getting a 7-foot fence rather than 6 foot?
City of Oakland, maximum 6 foot.
In this zoning, I think it's something to look into.
I'll look into it, but I was down at the city already talking to them, and my understanding from them was at that time was 6 foot.
In the residential zone.
I'll push that and see if we could. These are the on the right side is a typical gate from as viewed from the inside. Well, sort of. But it will have a push bar mechanism for exiting. It'll be locked from the outside. Only with a push bar would it release the lock from the inside. There'll be a mesh surrounding that so that somebody cannot reach in from the fence from the outside and push the push bar. That's the double gate. That's what it'll show, but it'll be 27 feet wide, again with a locking mechanism in the center. And I would think it'll have also a drop bolt that would go down and secure it into the concrete. In this one, the posts will be bigger, and they will be and the footings will be deeper. That one is going to be manual. We will be able to electrify it later if we wanted to. But our plan right now is just manual. It stays, that gate only opens very occasionally. Garbage trucks don't even go through there. No, we have no main gate yet. Just to be clear, we have not approached the subject of the main gate. We've tried designing it. It's not an easy solution because of the slopes involved, because of the width, because of the proximity to the street. And we're looking at a lot of different alternatives. Any other questions about design? Eleni is also an architect. I don't think we are. We don't even comply with the slopes of ramps to exit. You know, the building you could exit, but to get up the parking lot, we're designing them so that they're in landscaping. We can approach them with a concrete path. They will be approachable with a concrete path from the inside.
The height of the fence, I think, is very, very important, and I'm aware that the city is always trying to limit it, you know, whatever, around 6. I always make them 8 or 10 feet. I mean, I don't know. You know, sometimes they say something. Most of the times they don't say anything, or if they do say something, I don't know. I figure out ways of maintaining, because a 6-foot height, it's easy to jump over, unless there's I don't know, concertina wire.
That's specifically not allowed. You know, barbed wire is not allowed specifically. The city, when I spoke to them about a month ago, they were pretty adamant. They were familiar with the location, and they were pretty strong that 6 foot is our limit. And they were also very strong that fence had to be on our property, not on the easement. They were very strong about that, and I think they're going to be watching.
Right, so the height, I mean, trying to gain as much of the height as possible, right? So there's a curb there, so you know, you start saying the elevations from the curb and not from the dirt.
Well, generally, this upper portion up here, it's fairly level in from the street, but the area below, on the way down towards the chapel and the parking garage, the easement does slope up to our driveway.
Yeah.
So we are getting an effective height more than 6 feet from the sidewalk. In some cases, it'll be 6, 7 feet from the sidewalk. 7 feet, maybe 8 feet even from the sidewalk, because of the slope.
Okay, so I always try to look for ways of, you know, circumventing all these things in order to benefit the interested party. So like the posts, right? The posts, can they be another foot or 2 foot higher? That's not part of the fence. Because in the future, you can do things in order to, that's the most difficult thing, to these piers.
Well,
Are these
I don't know what a 7 foot post and a 6 foot fence would do us. What good that would do us. And again, it gets out of the standard, and it's going to raise eyebrows. You know, we could try. George? I will take it on myself to measure theirs, and also the distance from the street, because I don't think it's totally on their property.
That offset I don't think is the issue, but the height, either you're going to curve the top of the fence out so that you can't climb over it, or it's got to go taller with the spikes on top. Otherwise, a 6 foot fence like this is someone can easily jump over it.
Oh yeah, but grabbing the top railings, and you could basically sort of pole vault over it.
So either the pickets either curve out so you can't climb over, or this has to be much taller than it is. And it may only require zoning review from Oakland. But if you measure the neighbor's fence, I'm sure that's more than 6 feet tall.
I think you give a little more leeway if it's something you can see through as far as height than if it was a salt fence.
Right. Well, they also have a requirement for see-through, maximum 40% solid, 60% visibility.
Similar to what the Mormons have done, because it looks like they have a 6-foot fence, but they're also sitting on a curb that at some point is almost 10 feet high. So what about doing that? In other words, like you said, the fence itself will maintain a 6 foot. It won't slope down. So if we bring up the curb, maybe a foot or whatever, then maybe at that point we still have a 6-foot fence. They still have their visual, and we get happy. I do know that when you talk about residential, we have to have a setback in order to get larger than a 6-foot fence. So I don't think we're going to get that exception, but we might be able to play with the actual footing. Do you know what I mean on the footing?
We could do some regrading basically in the planting area, bring dirt in to raise the
Right.
to raise the slope. This first portion here, there's a curb there already. We could fill to the top of that curb and then start to 6 feet from there. I would gain 6 inches.
And that may be the argument that, like Thanasi is saying, that, you know, I mean, I wouldn't do it until you have an inspector out here, but I would say you're still maintaining a 6-foot fence, and then we're messing with the lower part. And you could say, I don't know if you wanted to pour concrete or you want to do dirt, but if you do concrete, then it's arguably a good argument to say, okay, so the fence is going to start at the top of that curb.
One other thing, John Victor and I have another trip planned down to the city of Oakland, so as to start our application process. And we'll have more information, I think, about outward curvature, things like that. This involves a city building permit, so it's not like you're building a backyard fence. It's a very visible location. They're going to be watching us for compliance.
Thank you. So next up is aesthetic alignment. So in addition to what you see here, we're considering color. So we've established this color palette for the campus that we reference or we use as a starting off point for any things that are visually related. So we considered a black fence, like the traditional one that you typically see. But then after looking at the neighbor's fence right across the street, it has this, the green finish. We kind of did visual comparisons with black, with green, and we felt that the green was less, there was less of a contrast, there was more of a visual flow in relation to the property, and it ties back to other architectural elements on the property. So it just had a more of a fluid visual look. We will have refined spear tops on the fence, which we also saw here. And then just another visual comparisons. You can see the sign and the green color. This fence would run right behind it. So again, it was more, it was about the color flow, the least obstructive, like visually obstructive color. Next up, we have the Zachas donation that we'd like to call out and give the family our heartfelt thank you to. Due to the generosity of the Zachas family, we are able to implement phase 1 of the campus security project, the perimeter fencing, which we just discussed. We are grateful for their donation and their commitment to the safety and well-being of our community. Their generosity ensures a more secure environment for all, and we deeply appreciate their support in making this project a reality.
We were talking about this the other night in our family, and so this is in memory. This was a gift that my uncle Gene Zajas left to Ascension. He was a lifelong member, and we were talking about it in our family the other night. And one thing that somebody said was how great it was that Uncle Gene did this. He was one of the early COVID deaths, very suddenly and tragically, but he had remembered Ascension in his will. And his dad, my papu, was one of, you see the pictures of the mortgage guarantors. And so he grew up with a legacy of giving to Ascension, and it's so wonderful that all these years later he did that. And I always think that my papu would have been really proud. He was a grocer, and he believed in Ascension when they were trying to build this, and he would love it that his son is ensuring the safety for continued generations.
So next, we're going into grant information.
So the grant that you keep hearing about is the Nonprofit Security Program grant, and it is put on by, it is actually sponsored by the Department of Homeland Security. FEMA is involved, and the state, California Office of Emergency Services, is the administrator of that grant. I just want to say that, as Father mentioned earlier, there was one person who really was, or two people that were really instrumental in getting this going. Back in April, I think it was literally a 10-day turnaround, and that was Mariela Cato, J.D. Woods, who assisted with the walkthrough, because to get this grant, you have to show that there are unique circumstances about your property or your site that require hardening. That included compiling crime statistics in Oakland. That included a vulnerability assessment. So J.D. Woods, David Chilamitos, myself walked through the campus and actually had to keep a running tally of all the weaknesses that we see in terms of our security. It's not just the fencing. It can include weaknesses in security video systems, lack of panic alarms, lack of cameras. So there's a wide scope of what this grant money can be used for, and the parish council last year wanted to harden the perimeter as the first line of defense, which is why we are then proceeding with the fence project. So the grant is highly competitive. Some institutions have gone through 2 or 3 applications. We were extremely fortunate, and we're blessed with a $150,000 award our first time around. Having said that, there's a lot of things that you learn when you're applying for a grant. There's a lot of paperwork. We still have required documents. Those were just turned in yesterday. And you have to understand that the Cal OES really wants an idea of what the project entails. They have to approve every step of the way. And so they do not like modifications, just so you know. So it's a great idea down the road when we have a next step that we want to decide what we want to try to apply for, that we really have a firm idea of what it will be used for, and hopefully as few modifications as possible. But the grant is a reimbursement grant. So what that means is we could not do this right now without the Zajas family donation. Mr. Zajas left this money to the church so that we could improve security, specifically a perimeter fence. We have to utilize those funds. FEMA will come in and Cal OES will come in, and they will look at our project at certain steps along the way. There are times that we have to draw down from the grant, which means that we have to make expenditures. It's a 3-year grant. The period ends in May of 2027, but what the agencies want is for us to actually do work and not submit a huge bill at the end of 3 years. And they want to be able to check it along the way. But again, we have to be able to have the money to start the project, so we are extremely blessed to have the Zajas family donation. And at the end of the project, my hope and our expectation is that we will be reimbursed for the funds. So that is, in short, the grant program. You can continue to reapply. They usually have 2 periods, I believe, throughout the year. So the next phase may be automated gates, it may be security systems, it may be panic alarms. That is something that I think we have to figure out what's the next step after we get through this one. And the main thing is we have to follow state and federal guidelines. So that means there are certain conditions that the feds put on. You have to have vendors who are not on the blacklist. You have to actually look and see, have they been disbarred by the federal agencies? You have to maintain certain conditions of the workplace. You have to make sure that we have to make sure we have a fidelity bond before we start. So there's a lot of conditions and checks and balances that we just have to comply with. There's language that has to be in the contract provisions of anybody that we end up hiring. So just so you all know, it's not like doing a project, as someone said, in their backyard. But that, in short, is the grant.
That rounds out our presentation, opening it up for questions and feedback.
I forgot to mention one of our other integral people, Christina Filios. She and Mariella were instrumental in getting this grant going with the paperwork. So my apologies. Christina Yanakopoulos.
I don't know, you talk about colors, I mean, there's the most common available, there's available sections of these types of walls, fences, segments of the railing that are readily available. They, like 8-foot sections or so, and they meet the requirements that there's like less than 4 inches spacing between the bars and what have you, and they're all baked enamel type of material, but it's usually black. I mean, you can paint it or whatever thereafter, but it's possibly, maybe that's something that, I don't know.
We have several estimates already from fencing contractors. I have a nice voice. I think everybody can hear me. Oh, okay. We have 3 bids from fencing contractors so far. And they all basically use a standard format with variations. You can get either 3 or 4 inches clear in the spacings between the bars. The bars basically are 3/4 inch. The horizontal bars are 1.5 inches. There's a sort of an industry standard about these fences. And one of the requirements also of these security grants is that the materials are American made and produced. So we have verified that with our vendors. They are American made.
I was talking of Chinese made.
So that's a wrinkle, but the standards are such that it's an industry standard that a lot of fence people adhere to. There are certain variations that are available. Custom paint colors, the green would be one of the available paint colors. It is an extra charge, but I think design-wise it's going to fit in very nicely. Oh, and by the way, the prices that we have for the fencing so far is under the $150,000. So it's approximately $130,000. We're in the price of updating to make sure that we're in that range.
All right. Hey, everyone, thank you for the floor. I think this question may be directed to you, John. We conducted a vulnerability study, and I don't think we really covered what was found in that? So what are the shortcomings that we're trying to address?
It was-
Maybe somebody could speak to it, I don't know.
Yeah, it was just a requirement of the grant application was that we do a self-assessment. And this isn't a professional, this is just lay persons walking around the campus seeing what our blind spots are. And I think Nancy touched on it during her presentation. It's lack of video cameras, it's lack of surveillance cameras, it's panic alarms, things like that. Obviously hardening, closing the campus, because we considered Ascension a vulnerable target. What we did was we cited the fact that we're next to the Mormon temple, and you can see the Mormon temple anywhere in the Bay Area. We have essentially 3 schools on our property. Head Royce parks their cars down below. The Montessori school's a renter in the back. And we've got some basketball here as well. So the fact that we have lots of minors here, and again, we went back and checked the records and found the damage to the copper on the chapel, different incidents of break-ins, things like that. And so that's essentially what we came up with, and it was enough to put into the application. So it was very preliminary. Now we did organize a group of retired and current law enforcement professionals in this church, and we are slowly taking on the study of our campus security, right? We've got a festival coming up, and I know Yanni had said several times he wanted us to help kind of take a look at that. But it's a good group of people, and we're going to work all towards security issues.
So I'm going to say to all of you, I love you all with Christ, and I'm also fundamentally opposed to this project. So just so there's clarity in where I'm coming from. I asked that question because after a lot of prayer and thought about it, what I came up with was that we are fundamentally lacking in security, and it in my mind, it correlates to the security of the children who we host. Right? I was here just today, and I was able to drive my car right around the back, park it right behind the church. I had access to every one of those children. I could have taken 3 of them and driven right out of here without a problem. So, I'm not saying we don't have problems to solve, we have problems to solve. What I want to know is, how does this fence solve that problem? Keeping in mind that there's no gate for preventing ingress and egress for vehicles. And then I want to say something else. So I'd like somebody to comment on that, like how are we solving that problem?
One thing that this fence does is that it makes one vehicle access to this portion. And basically one pedestrian access. So that is a cut down from being basically wide open right now. So we are controlling it. We haven't stopped it. And it's a problem to create gates at that location. We have probably 150, maybe 200 cars easily a day that go through that entrance.
And I would say the short answer is we're not going to throw up a fence, a manual fence right now, to just close everything off. We're trying to do this in a methodical way that's going to look good for the property, that's going to work. This is phase 1. Phase 2 is an electronic gate, and like they said, we're working on that.
So we know how capital projects go with this community, unfortunately. We've had some successes and we've had some challenges, right? When the time comes to vote on this, I think it's important that we lay out what the problems are that we're trying to solve, the solutions that we have in mind, whether they are multi-phased or whether they're single-phase, and how we expect to get there, right? So if the answer is we're going to need another $100,000 to put in an automatic gate, then let's be forthright with the community that that's what it's going to take, and that's the plan, and that's what solves the problem. Because I think you'll get a lot of support, even from somebody who is as opposed as I am to this whole gate idea or this fence idea, to the idea that we are hosting and collecting, frankly, quite a bit of money from a community of folks who are very vulnerable, because that's who I think has the vulnerability, right? We've been here for 60 years as a community, and thank God, you know, as far as I know, we haven't had the type of incident that we're alluding to, that, you know, we're trying to address and solve. And, you know, in part because I think we walk with the Lord, I don't have the fear that seems to be the undercurrent of a lot of the effort that's associated with this, with all respect. And I do respect everybody who's been involved with this. I think this is a wonderful proposal. I would suggest to you all that this is not a country club, that this is a hospital, right? And I say that because I'm in intensive care here, all right? And I think, John, you and I were on parish council some 20 years ago, and I don't know if you remember this. And I've told this story in front of Father Nick, and so sorry for the redundancy, Father. There was a young man who walked in to our facility up in the AHEPA conference room. I don't know if you remember this, probably in his early 20s. Not a parishioner. Had never been here before. Saw the church. Felt like he needed to talk to somebody. Came in looking for Father. Just so happens we were here before Father was here that time. Am I ringing any bells here? Does this sound familiar? Turns out that person was thinking of committing suicide. Somehow he confided in us who were there. We handed him our cell phone. He spent the next 20 minutes on that phone with the crisis helpline. When you have an inviting facility, one that welcomes people, not one that closes them out, we all have that opportunity to save a soul, save a life. I mean, again, with all respect, 7-foot fences and barbed wire? What are we doing? Let's keep this in focus about what we're here to do, right? Father Nick, you shared a story. You came here with your wife. I believe it was in the 90s.
It was in the
2000s.
So, Mike, may I speak? So the first thing that I would say is I think that hospitality is very much, has to be a character and a virtue of our community, number one. The story that Mike is alluding to is that when I was a student at Berkeley, Dina and I came here and no one said hello to us. This was probably 2009 or so. And we came a few times and nobody said hello. Now I'm your priest. Thank God, the character of our community, I would say, is very, very different. And that's something that just constantly needs to be worked on. And as we progress through this conversation, I think, Mike, you're correct to point out, we really need to carefully think about what it is that we're doing. And I would say two things on that. We have something that we need to keep focused. One is that there is a very real reality that we have to attend to. We have a school on our campus. We have over 100 people who are coming here tonight for dance practice. And our campus is very open, which is very inviting. But I can tell you in the 5 years that I've been here, I've also dealt with countless situations with folks where I was seriously concerned for the people that were gathered here at that time, for our staff, for volunteers, for others. And thank God, all those situations worked out okay, for the most part so far. But this is where I would say it's not about being fearful, it's about being proactive. Because the only way that we can be able to look at this with a sense of hope or positivity is to think, what steps could we take both to ensure that we remain hospitable, but also how we can ensure the safety, because safety is also part of hospitality. In the story that you shared about the young man who needed crisis counseling, he needed a place to feel safe. He needed to feel safe. For any of our youth, for any of our adults, any of our seniors, they need a place where they can feel safe. And for those of us who have had the experience of having that trust broken about a place or about a person, whether it's here at the church or it's in other aspects of our life, we know that that kind of experience is long, damaging, and very traumatic. So I'll tell you another story. On Christmas Day, we had a very full church, which was a joy, and Father Tom and I were distributing communion. There was a young man who had come in off the street, very disheveled, his clothes were dirty, and he got into the communion line. Father Tom and I are there. We're passing out communion. We're distributing communion. This young man comes in front of Father Tom, and he falls down on his knees in front of him and starts crying. And I think it was Jim Cole-Catrones who came up and helped this young man up and guided him to the back of the church. He was able to take a moment. Father Tom spoke with him more afterward. So you're right. That's what this place is for. And there has to be a middle ground for us as we look forward and think, how can we allow a space for that? Those incredibly affecting moments, as I'm thinking about it right now, I'm getting a little bit teared up because it was just such a powerful moment. How many of us have ever fallen down before receiving communion, receiving Christ's body and blood? Unless it's at the anaphora, I don't think that we're doing that very often. But we have to be able to find a kind of middle ground, because we have to work with God synergistically, right? This happens in all the aspects of our life: prayer, fasting, stewardship, almsgiving, and also in this, right? So we have to be carefully thinking about that, and I thank you for pointing out, like, we're going to have to figure out what that looks like. There's been a lot of conversation about gates tonight. Are we going to put in an automated gate or not? I can't tell you the conversations that I've sat through. How are these gates going to open? Who would come through these gates? How are they going to work? Do we give everyone a clicker? What is going to happen? Are you a member or not a member? Do you get a gate code? The conversations, that's kind of one level, right? At a deeper level, I think you're pointing us to just remember, why are we here? And how is this going to fit into the rest of the campus that already facilitates what we do? That being said, I do think it's really necessary. I've been here on a number of occasions where if we had been more proactive, I would have felt much more comfortable for our community. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to just be vigilant as well. Both vigilant in our prayer and vigilant as to our surroundings as well, too.
If I may, just to be clear, I think it's actually a travesty that the children don't have some kind of protective barrier around them. I think it's downright dangerous in the modern age that we live in, okay? So, although I've thought about this and prayed about it a lot, I do not have answers. I do not claim to be the solution provider to these difficult challenges. With that said, it might be worth considering a much more, I'll call it fencing solution that is not on the street front, but rather secures among the buildings that are most critical here. So imagine a fence that actually connects the church to the Richmond room. Imagine a fence that runs along the upper parking lot to the wall over there. Imagine a fence that connects the back of the church to the parking garage and over here. That would be something that you could make 7 foot tall if you wanted to, because you know what? It's not on the street front. And you could make it in such a way where all the children and all the dancers are all protected, and anybody who's in the community hall is protected. But it doesn't actually create a barrier between the purely religious facilities that we have, right? It avoids the entire issue of the gate and how do I get in, and Imagining me in 20 years trying to get in here not knowing how to work the code that's going to be required to get in, or paying a security guard that's going to sit out front and create the look of San Quentin. So, food for thought. I'm trying to encourage us to look at what problem are we trying to solve and address the solution to that problem. Because what I've heard a lot about tonight is solutions that presume a problem that are frankly incomplete. Because Harry, with all respect, if it's a wide opening that allows me to drive a literal bus through it, because that's what we're going to have, I have improved the security, not a spit, for those children in that scenario that I painted for you. Right? Sorry. It's just, I don't believe it. The gate's not there, you got nothing. As opposed to what? We're going to drive through?
As opposed to 600.
Well, I don't remember the last time somebody drove a truck over the landscaping, but yeah. I mean, they come
walk
in,
right through there. They walk right through.
so I'm not going to grab kids and run out. I'm going to put them in the car and I'm going to drive out, right? So anyway, I've spoken my piece about where I'm coming from. Hopefully I've given you something to think about and consider. You know, I am one of these community members, just like all of you. Whatever the community goes with, I will agree to and support. But please consider what we're trying to do in terms of problem, solution, have those things match. Before we get too hung up on this is the answer before we know what problem we're trying to solve, okay?
Thank you, Mike. Thank you.
I feel that the car break-ins were a lot of the reason for the fencing. And when you have the fence that's open, so you could still see the beautiful church, and you have it's almost like a guide to where the entrance is. So it's not necessarily leaving everybody out, it's almost like a guide to how to come in. And you stop the opportunity of people coming in all along through the plants, crushing the little thing that we have now, breaking into cars and stealing things out of cars. Many people got their property stolen, cars broken into, and this is a way to deter that. That is a big issue, I think, as far as safety. Again, the one entrance, as Harry was saying, it still allows it all open. There is more of a sense of security. And we pay the security guard to sit outside there, and there's no way, I'm sorry, there's no way that one security guard can go up the hill to the upper parking lot, down into the parking garage, and all throughout. If there's a fence, it's a little easier, because they're not having anybody walking straight through. So that's my feeling towards that fence, yet it's still open. It's not San Quentin. It's open, beautiful coloring to match the church. And I think it's better than a closed gate with a code.
I'd like to speak in favor of this, especially as phase one. I was the chairman of the parking structure and chapel project, still am, and we always had intentions of a fence. If you realize the driveway as you go in, there's an island in the middle, which we all keep running into, but that was for a fence and a gate. But my personal feeling is, I don't think a automated gate is going to work. And I know that's our next phase, but I personally don't think it's going to work. We have this back gate over here that Mike brought up. It's never locked. I don't even know if it works. I don't know if it's manual or automatic. I have no idea, but there's no reason that it's open at any time. It should be locked at all times. We also have, in the parking structure, which we considered security at that time, we have a lower gate that comes down, only comes up if you're exiting. We also have a gate as you drive down the driveway, and that's usually never closed. It's already been run into twice. I think it would really be, it's almost embarrassing that we're not dealing with this security and it's taken us so long to do this. This was a part of this last plan after we did the parking structure. We just ran out of money. But the other thing that I think we need to be really aware of, you know, there's a history here. There's people that come and they make out in the upper lot, or they go into the parking structure and they steal cars. Or I think it was in the 80s, there was someone that got shot in the front of the church in some kind of argument. It wasn't a Greek person. And then died right on the bridgeway going to the office. They were trying to get in there. So we found him the next morning dead right on the bridgeway. Let's realize we're in Oakland, and there's a lot of activity that goes on here, good, bad, whatever. I think we need to be smart about this. The other thing that's very concerning to me is there are so many children on this campus on a day-to-day basis, 7 days a week. They're either dancing, or they're going to school, or they're even going to Sunday school, or they're coming to church. For those reasons, we need to protect those kids. And I think we need to be very forthright and move forward and do this. If you ask me, I think an automatic gate will not get used. It'll either get run into. I think what will probably happen is they'll run into the lower one and then back up and run into the upper one. And then you don't have the gate. I think, here's my thing. I really think that we need to consider full-time security, or at least from 8 in the morning till midnight or 10 o'clock at night, whatever it is. And I think we should do a study of how much money we actually spend in security now. And then if we need to augment money, we augment it from our parish budget. The other thing is we might be able to reach out to the Montessori school and see if they would, sponsor some of the security costs. And I think in the front we should do, just like the Mormons do, a kiosk that has one-way glass and it looks like someone's there at all times, and man it as much as we can. I'll give another example. The church has an alarm system. The Oakland Richmond Room, or Parish Richmond Room has an alarm system. I don't remember in the last 10 years that they've ever been engaged. We are not good in securing our campus at all. To be honest with you, we're the luckiest. Like there's an angel or God watching over us, because with all the gold we have around and all the fine art and whatever else, it's just unbelievable that they haven't come through and just wiped us out. So even in the years when they're still doing it, stealing copper wiring and things like that, I think we need to really take this whole thing and understand where we're at, who we're servicing. And I know you guys are doing it. Thank you, John. Thank you, Harry. But I really think that we need to consider full-time security at this space, and have, I don't even know if we need a manual fence, or a gate, that's fine. If we don't need it and you can just come on the campus, that's fine. But I will tell you, things do happen after 12 o'clock at night here too, like that gentleman that was shot. So that's my feeling. I applaud everybody. This is a great first step. And the only question I do have is, if it's 130,000, what are you gonna do with the other 20,000? Because you might as well use the whole 150. And I don't know what you can come up with, but you'll find something, I'm sure.
Thank you, Tom. A lot of food for thought from everybody. Remember, it's a reimbursement grant. So what we spend that's approved by Cal OES is the money that we get back, and whatever we've put in our proposal. Right now, if you look outside, we have chicken wire. That's our perimeter. It's maybe 4 feet high. And I can go over the vehicle double gate that's never used, that is that way. and go in between and go over it, which I did the other day because Harry and John Victor and I were measuring stakes. I'm putting stakes out. If you are curious, if there are stakes out front right now with orange ribbon, and those indicate the markings of what the fence line will be, and there's blue ribbon or tape tied around stakes, and that's where we envision the approximate area of the emergency gates. If you had just a perimeter fence, right, all barricaded across, and something happened on campus for everybody here, an earthquake, a natural disaster, an act of violence, there would be very limited, everyone would be panicking and running probably towards the main driveways where the cars are also trying to get out, which is the reason that we have the access gates in our plan. But this is just the first step, as you've all noted. The Zahas money was earmarked, especially from Mr. Zahas, for security. And it just happens that that is the way that we are able to start with this first step, which is the exterior perimeter. Again, the feeling is still allow cars to come in and out of the main driveway, but close off the upper driveway, have some emergency exits. And then when we get to the next phase, whether we have automated man-in-a-box, swing gates, interior, that's the next step.
The last one you want to hear from more tonight is me. So one thought as you just explained this, maybe the gate actually remains open all the time, and instead it's tied into a panic system where it shuts if there's an emergency, right? Because that's one of the things that, I don't know how many of you are teachers, but they all have a lockdown capability, and there's no way to lock down this campus, to your point.
Are you talking about the pedestrian gates?
I'm also suggesting that you sort of have this idea that there's going to be a gate for the cars.
There very well may not be.
Well,
it's a difficult solution.
Okay, but I'm trying to give you a solution that actually might be palatable, right? Because it avoids all the issues of are people able to get in and who gets in and all that, and you actually just have it open permanently, but you also have it immediately closable, right? You put in those mechanisms, whether there's piers that come up, those pylons that come out, or a gate that shuts that basically allows you to lock down if there is a crisis.
That's something certainly to consider.
Right. So just a thought. So then you have a plan at least on how you're truly going to secure the entire. If you're going to go for the whole perimeter, which I've already suggested you don't, but if you do, there might be some way to address that.
That's certainly worth
accessibility.
As an idea.
Any other questions?
One thing that John Victor and I have talked about recently is the gate that everybody knows that is at the head of the driveway going down to the rear parking lot. That can be automated, re-automated. I think at one time it was automated. It can be re-automated and kept closed because it's a very small parking lot. And a select number of people can have the access to that. So that's a very easy fix for that parking lot. I'm concerned that we would feel, with something like that, we would feel like we're in a prison yard. Yeah, well, that's certainly worth considering. What we have here is phase one of several. So we will consider many options. Your input is valuable.
Okay, so when this came to my attention to work on a grant from Father Nick, one of the driving factors for me to just like get it done, and how can we get it done in a week, we knew we had to do the perimeter fencing, but the one thing that drove me was specifically the kids, and my kids. And one is we ask our community for a lot of money many times, and we can only give so much, right? So we got this generous fund, and then I thought, okay, if we work on this grant, we're getting free money. We just have to work really hard to get it. And then with that, I was thinking we have this additional money that then we can put back into our buildings to further secure the school campus, which, although it's not a ministry of the church, it is still children that we should protect. And so to upgrade the windows there, to do security cameras, to update the doors there, I mean, they're so broken. This grant drove me in the 10 days to get it done, because this is free money that in my hopes is that we put it back into the campus to further secure and do upgrades within our facility. And that was kind of what drove me to get that done. And really for the kids, and because our kids are gonna grow up here, and we want them to be protected, secured, have the doors open properly so they're not broken, and that we're holding it with a garbage can, right? Just the small little things that we need to do, or a rock. Okay, anyways, thank you.
All right, real easy question. Is there any effect on the parking because it has to be 10 feet away from the face of the curb?
No, in this phase, no parking places will be affected. Oh, the A-frames that are there? Oh, no, the fence is behind that.
Yeah, can I? So when you drive in, the actual fence, if it's running along Lincoln, and then we've got our driveways, the fence line is going to come in a V. So if you're standing on that little island that Tom loves to hit all the time, and you're looking out towards Lincoln, the fence is actually, you're looking at it, and the fence line kind of comes at a V. So it's behind that sign, and it's also behind the boulder on your way out. There's a little boulder there, and there's a stop sign to get out of the driveway. It's at an angle. And then the rest of the fence runs parallel to Lincoln Avenue, if that makes sense. All I can say is that's phase 2, or phase 2, maybe phase 3, but we don't have that.
It's the beginning point, it's the end point of phase 1. And as far as we can foresee, none of that would have to be torn out if we decided to put further gates. Say that again?
That tells me that you have to grade it.
Well, that whole driveway is on a slope, and that makes gates very difficult. And it's also very close to the street, which makes access very difficult.
I get that.
If it was designed from scratch, 4 gates, it wouldn't look like that.
Well, we'll
It
see.
would be a total different solution if it was designed for gates. The gates are a Band-Aid right now.
Yeah.
And we may never find a good solution for gates. We may never, except for a full-time security guard.
We'll see.
Okay, anybody else? Okay. Well, first I want to say, just on this conclusion of the conversation about the gate or not gate, you can all go home, grab some scratch paper, and just get to work trying to figure it out.
Go visit the pegs that are in the landscape. You'll see pegs with red tape, orange tape, or blue tape wrapped around. That's the line of the fence. Next Sunday, take a look at it.
Yeah. So I invite you all to try and solve it. But one, I just want to say thank you to the committee, to everyone who made this evening possible. So, and was able to submit the grant as well. So just thank you all. Thank you to Nancy and to John and to Mariella, Christina, who's not here this evening, to everyone who contributed, to Harry, to John, Victor as well, to Anna as well. You know, there's a couple of other important things about this evening, not just discussing the future of the church and how we're going to be securing our campus, but we also have to have an eye for all the other things that we are doing on our campus. And I think Mike Gialis actually brought up some good questions for us for how we think about the future. We have endless conversations about how we need to care for this place that has been entrusted to us. You'll hear me say this a lot. I refer to this church as what has been entrusted to us. And we have to pass it on to the next generation in better condition than we received it. And that's really the goal. And we have to be able to balance two things, that kind of present need that we have, but also the reality and the commitment that we have to our faith. And how is that informing our decision making? Also, this evening is a good practice session for us because there's other work we have to do on our campus. We have a chapel to complete. We have other projects that are going to be down the road. And so we need to get into a practice as a community of having these types of conversations. We need to be able to listen with curiosity, with love, openness to what other people have to share, hear their thoughts, things maybe we've considered or not considered, and then be able to move forward. Because the way that we're going to move forward best is all together. That's how the church makes decisions. We'll hear in just a few weeks, it's closer than it seems, folks, with Great Lent, we'll hear the proclamation of the Seventh Ecumenical Council. It seemed good to the apostles and to us. It seemed good to the church and to us. That's our goal. It seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us. So whatever decision that we're making falls in line with what God's will is for our community as well. So we're learning how to do this work. It's great. So again, big thank you. Thank you to everyone who came tonight, who braved the rain, and was part of this conversation. We'll be updating everyone more as we move along, and how the conversation advances. Am I missing anything else? No? Okay. So thank you all for coming this evening. Go in peace.